Hey there, everybody. It's your girl, Self Carrie. Welcome back to my channel. I'm your astrological empowerment coach. And today we're going to talk about the mother wound and how you can actually find indications of the mother wound on your personal astrological birth chart. I'm going to show you in a demonstration, and I'm also going to share with you some stories about how I found my mother wounds on the chart. Before we get into that, I just want to reintroduce myself. I'm Self Carrie. I'm an astrological empowerment coach, and I have worked for over 8 years with people on a monthly, bi weekly, quarterly, yearly basis, working with people, families, couples, businesses, business partners, colleagues, siblings, everyone in between, helping them guide their life and make the most of their amazing life using the transits on their astrological birth chart. And the mother wound is one of those parts of our lives that we can actually find in our birth chart. And today I'm going to show you how. As if you're interested in getting a reading with me, a coaching session with me, or joining one of my memberships or workshops, you can find all of that information down in the description box. So let's get into it. What is the mother wound? The mother wound is that part of you that never had secure attachment. For whatever reasons, there are so many. We often have mother wounds due to narcissistic mothers, mother wounds due to mothers that were ill, or mothers who had postpartum when they had us, mothers who were being abused themselves when they had us, mothers who had wounds from their own mothers. There's so many reasons why a mother was not able to securely attach and provide an emotionally safe space for a child to securely attach. And I want you to understand that the mother wound is not an opportunity to be a victim. Most people have a mother wound and a father wound and a sibling wound and all kinds of wounds, right? This is the journey of life, is identifying these things and working to heal them and integrate them into yourself and accept them and ultimately move forward, right? So the mother wound isn't about, now I can, now I can be a victim all the time. The mother wound is about finding where you didn't securely attach and then learning what that energy feels like so that when it shows up again, you can label it and you can help yourself move past it. Now, in astrology, we have a natal placement of our mother wounds. And then we also have how those wounds might be in transit, meaning the times and dates when we might see them show up again, or the times and dates that certain parts of those wounds might be up for healing. So that's why I always say astrology, your astrology chart is like your driver's manual. It is an ongoing thing. You got to go back to it often, right? And so why not let it be your best friend if it's going to be a lifelong passenger, right? So the first thing I want to do is share with you what you can expect when you are working with a mother wound on your personal chart. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay. Now this is my astrological birth chart, and this is the part of the chart that's just what we call aspects in astrology. Okay. Now let me make this a little bit bigger if I can. Okay, good. And I'm going to bring it down here. Okay. Aspects in astrology are not just your, planets and things like that. Aspects are how these planets intertwine, how they talk to each other, what's the energy we can get from them. Okay. And so when you want to look at your mother wounds, you always want to look at this area right here. This is called the mother line. All right. It's the moon. Now, this represents your actual mother, whoever provided that nurturing or did not provide that nurturing. It could also be like a father who is a nurturing figure, an uncle, a granddad. It doesn't necessarily have to be a gendered female. But the moon represents that nurturing energy and whether we got it or did not get it. Okay. Now, when you go down this line, you want to take a look at these planets on this side right here, and you want to see if you have any aspects to any of these planets. Like, for instance, I have my moon right here, and it is in an aspect to Venus. Okay. Now, you want to take a look at what's the aspect, right? on the first glance, I can already tell that can already tell that I got some stuff going on with my moon line, with my maternal line. Okay. But the aspects tell us if that's good stuff or not so good stuff, right? So the first thing you'll notice is that I have a sextile. A sextile looks like a little tiny star. It's in astrology, it's what we call a minor aspect, right? I would not call this a mother wound because a sextile is actually an opportunity. Okay. And sextile is not going to be an actual challenge. It's not even going to be really a wound of any sort. What you want to look for if you're looking for something that's a moon is you want to look for, or a wound, is you want to look for a hard aspect. That would be something like this, which is called an inconjunct. All right. I have an inconjunct of my moon to Neptune at 0 degrees. That's an acute degree. Okay. And astrology, all astrologers do it differently, but we usually try to do 3 orbs or 3 degrees, is usually considered potent, type. I also have a square here. You can see a moon in a square to Pluto at 0 degrees, right? If you go down, I also have a semi square. This is a minor aspect, but it's a square nonetheless. And it is in a semi square at 1 degree to my part of fortune, which represents how I make my fortune or how I get my abundance in this life. And then also a conjunction is actually a hard aspect. A lot of times we hear about conjunctions and we think, oh, this is like super easy, or it's like we can't get away from it because it's so wonderful, it's so dreamy. A conjunction is like standing next to a roaring fire, right? Yes, it's hot in the beginning, but then after a while you're just next to a roaring fire and it don't let up. Okay, so a conjunction can kind of be overwhelming. This moon is in a conjunction to my Eros, as you can see here at 1 degree. I also have a moon square to my ascendant at 4 degrees and a moon conjunct my midheaven at 5 degrees. Okay, so let's go through the different aspects and help you understand what they are. If we're talking about a square, a square to your moon is going to represent a challenging aspect, but a square is meant to be overcome. But it represents the planet Saturn type energy that represents constriction, something that is a challenge, like I said before. Just hard energy, right? A square is kind of not fluid. It's just, a square, it's a box, right? The other hard aspect is an inconjunct. An inconjunct represents two planets that are next to each other that don't understand each other. Okay. It's kind of like if you're in a subway, New York subway, and people are right next to you, and you don't know who this person is. You don't know but they're all up on you, and you're kind of just like, you know what? If you were like a little bit a ways away, I could actually have a conversation with you and maybe get to know you a little better and feel a little safer. But since you all up in my space, now all I can do is do this, like, ouch, right? An inconjunct represents two planets that are so close that they really don't communicate well. And so that often causes some challenges and some pain, right? And also an opposition. An opposition represents when two planets are flip flop between that, right? So, again, if we're talking about mother wounds and secure attachment, you're not going to feel very easy to attach to this person if they're constantly given flip flop energy, right? That doesn't establish trust. And then finally, if you have a conjunction, sometimes depending on you, a conjunction can feel good. If you are one of the more intense signs, like a water sign like a Scorpio, or you're a Cancer or a Pisces, and you can kind of maybe take some of that deeper stuff, or maybe you're an Aries or a Sagittarius or a Leo fire sign. You're kind of up for the challenge of standing in front of a roaring fire. A conjunction, depending on what else is on your chart, might work for you. But if we're talking about wounds, you kind of don't want to have a conjunction, is what I'm trying to say. Now, let me get that my chart back up for us to take a look at. Okay. So I'm going to go through each one of the planets. And if you want to take a look at your own chart and then write this down, I've already talked about squares being a challenging in energy, right? Something that's a challenge but can get over. Um, an inconjunct is two planets that don't understand each other, and therefore there's some friction there. An opposition is two planets that flip flop and don't provide security. And then finally, a conjunction is a planet that's right in front of your face and you can't get away from it. Okay. So let's go down to my first hard aspect. That would be this inconjunct in Neptune. If you are, if you have your moon in some sort of aspect, actually, you know what? Before we do that, I'm going to go into just go moon to moon, go through all the planets instead of starting with my stuff. So if you have a moon in a, say, a hard aspect to the moon, right? This will tell you your relationship with your mother was probably very emotionally tumultuous, right? That there was a lot of watery depth, maybe nurturing or lack of nurturing, or over nurturing, oversharing. Smother mother is what comes to mind, okay? Or controlling mother, controlling the emotions, manipulating the emotions, even. But it's almost like because it's moon, moon, and moon, the two of you are just in it together. It's kind of like a very codependent, inseparable kind of energy, okay? If you have a moon in a hard aspect to your Mercury, this means you may have had a lot of communication issues with your mother. You may not have understood her. She may not have understood you. You may have often felt misunderstood. Mercury is also represented by the twins. And so there may have been an almost Jekyll and Hyde type of energy when it came to your mother. You might have had harsh words. Communication or lack thereof would have been the root of the wound, the mother wound, if you have a hard aspect there. If you have a hard aspect to your moon and Venus, Venus represents beauty and love and also worth, self worth. So if you have a hard aspect, you may have had some beauty issues with your mother. Maybe your mother was a very beautiful mother and you didn't feel quite as beautiful, or maybe you felt, or you were more beautiful than your mother and you got a lot of flack from that. Also, Venus has to do with self worth. So there may have been this kind of it was hard to get a feeling of being worthy by your mother. You're a feeling of your mother loved you, or your mother thought you were beautiful, or your mother thought you were feminine, or your mother thought you were valuable in the first place. You might have had some issues with that with the moon in a hard aspect to Venus. If you have a moon in a hard aspect to Mars, this usually means that your mother and you had some more volatile and perhaps angry and physical altercations, or there was some sort of physical intimidation in the relationship with the mother, and you have a wound around that. Mars is that warrior energy, it's Aries, it represents it's a masculine energy. It can be quite dominant sometimes, especially when we're talking about our emotions, right? So this would indicate, a physically, perhaps abusive relationship with the mother. If your moon is in a hard aspect to Saturn, Saturn is that constricting energy. I often call this aspect the ice mother. It's like an icy, very Capricornian, do what you're told type of energy. Capricorn is not the most warm and fuzzy, right? And in fact, it's the opposite sign of Cancer, which is that mother moon energy. So having an icy mother is never, never super fun, or a mother that's very constricting, a mother who made you feel constricted, and therefore maybe you feel more afraid of life because you had a mother that was trying to protect you by over disciplining or constricting your freedom. If you have a hard aspect to the moon in Uranus, uh, Uranus in a hard aspect means that future energy, or kind of like you'd never quite on the same timeline. I often call it like feeling like an alien mother, or like a mother that oftentimes I see this with clients whose mother had a mental illness, or whose mother was often maybe erratic, like there, not there, or the mother maybe had a job outside of the home. And so there was this kind of feeling as if the mother was thin air, or the mother was like an alien that just came to visit sometimes, never quite feeling safe and secure, because air energy doesn't work well with the moon. There's always a feeling of the mother is doing things for your greater good, but the greater good is in the future. Like what you want is for her nurturing to be there with you right then, or whomever played that mothering role. Okay. So that's moon in a hard aspect to Uranus. If you have moon in a hard aspect um, to Neptune, Neptune is a gassy, delusional energy. This is for sure when people had mothers who had addictions or some sort of dependency, or maybe were just prone to escapism. Or, um, like for instance, my mother had my brother and I very young, which means she really wasn't old enough to be mature and to have, like to be maternal, right? So there, that nebulous energy of this mother is almost like a myth. She's like, like she's kind of there and not there. It's kind of like a ghost, okay? Because she's always escaping through different addictions, or escaping through escapism, just watching TV, uh eating, shopping, whatever it is. It's like that's that kind of nebulous, not quite there type of energy. If you have a hard aspect between your moon and Pluto, this usually means a power play. This usually means a mother who needed to have a lot of control over you, maybe because she felt she didn't have control over her own life. And so this can create a lot of friction for you. I have a moon square Pluto, which means freedom is my number one thing. It's like I am a devoted person, but I gotta feel like I'm free to live my own life as well. Because that comes from that old wound of having been very constricted and controlled and dominated as a child. And really, it's a narcissistic energy, is what it is. So of course, there's other aspects and other planets, or not other planets, but other aspects that your mother wound can come from. And you can get into that if you get a reading with me. I'm happy to go through all of them with you. But those are the kind of energy you can expect from the mother wounds when it pertains to the 9 planets. And this is kind of what you want to feel into. Like when you look at your chart and you go through and you see which planets aspect your moon, not all of them will, okay? Then you want to write down which aspects are between the moon and that planet. Is it a square? Is it an opposition? Is it an inconjunct? Is it a conjunct, right? And then you want to take a look at the degree. Is it a 0 degree, which is the most acute, and you feel that the most, or is it a 1 or a 2 or a 3? I usually go up to 3. Some people go up to 5 and even 10, right? But I find that there's so much else going on in your chart. You try to keep it to what you can just feel and identify. But that's what the mother wound is. And when I work with clients, we work on those mother wounds. We talk about when that shows up. We also take a look at the astrological forecast, and we say, okay, so when is this going to be showing up in your life, and how can we strategize and navigate with it? I've helped my clients really get through some really challenging times with family members, but also be able to help themselves with school and getting through challenging times and taking tests and making good business decisions while they were dealing with the mother wound being triggered at that period by some sort of astrological transit, right? So there's a lot going on in our chart at all times. And when you work with an astrological empowerment coach like myself, I can help you work through and work with the energy. It's an investment in you and an investment in the success and betterment of your life. And I can't think of one thing that's more important than your own self-care. All right, everybody, thanks so much for listening. If you have any questions about the mother wound, if you've been able to identify your own mother wounds on your astrological chart, put them down in the comments. I want to see. I want us to have a nice community where we can talk about these things and how these aspects show up. It's going to be different for everybody. All right, everybody, thanks so much for your time. Had a lot of fun sharing this with you. And until the next video, take care.